So we're going to go ahead and get started. We are recording this. And I'm hopefully sharing this as well. Thanks everybody for showing up. We're going to do about 30 minutes, starting whenever I get started, about presentation, talking about the topic, and then we're going to open it up for discussion. Again, as always, we're going to be posting the presentation part up on YouTube. The discussion we're going to keep, since, I want everybody to feel comfortable talking in the room. So that's what we got going on. Please, please, please feel free to interject any questions, issues, comments that you have throughout the whole thing. And what we're going to be talking about is specifically stamps and the whole tool set. And it's been called other things, your stack, your whatever, but we'll get through that. A couple of things. One is, here's some information about the CoMITs conversation, co-managed IT services. If you go to CoMITs4MSPs.com, yes, I'm trying to monetize this. What a shock. There will be some free resources, some samples, all of that kind of thing, including a tool that we've developed, which tells you it probably isn't that terribly sophisticated, but something that we've been using to kind of gather and coordinate some of our stamps offerings. There will be that. It's not up there right now as part of the free stuff, but it will be before the next day or so. One thing we do have, like I said, we've got the CoMITs4MSPs.com. I'm actually I've put in a special. We've cut the price by $100 between now, if you sign up between now and the end of December. If you are a Tech Tribe team, which is a really interesting and growing MSP organization based out of Australia, but it's international, whatever. There's an additional 10% off coupon or code you can get from there. And you will get anything new that we add, and we're adding new presentations roughly once a month that are aimed at both pure and co-managed MSPs. You'll get access to all those materials, and you also get one-on-one time with me. Okay, it's not all good. And then we also do have a peer group that meets monthly. We've met twice so far that is roughly on the same focus. We do a short presentation or half presentation and then half discussion on it. So, anywho, caveats again, blah, blah, blah. What is co-managed IT services? Again, it's any agreement between an MSP that works with the internal IT folks. And here's something I'm starting to get more and more specific on, is there's really 4 co-managed IT strategies that I've found that organizations are having. And the first is what I call the Seagull. That's basically your project. Okay, it's not recurring revenue. But that happens often. You come in, you just do this one sale, one service, one and done, blah, blah, blah. But the real ones where we talk about MRR, that's the service and subscription. That will be where you're selling the Office 365 licensing. That's it. There's no included support, no nothing. It's just resale. Then there's the silo. The silo is where you're focused. You take this one aspect. The most common ones there would be Azure, 365, security, backups, firewall, whatever. And you really don't move outside of that silo, and the client's internal IT don't move in. That happens fairly frequently. Then there's what I call the CoMITs. That's the really core focus of what we're talking about here, and that is where you actually share your tool set with them. To me, that's the stickiest. That also gives you the best opportunity to work on all other aspects of it. You're the hardest to replace. All of that kind of fun stuff. And then finally, there's pure MSP, which is not a co-managed, all that. So those are the basic topics or categories that I see as far as MSP solutions go. And here's just a little more description of those. Now, let's talk stamps. And by the way, this is a clever acronym. That's it. I really don't care what you call it. I don't care whether this is inclusive or non-inclusive or whatever, but the bottom line is, for the CoMITs model, it's a concept of all of the tools that you and your technician use, you make those same pieces, parts available to the internal IT people with some level of responsibility on your side. We'll talk about that in a minute. And I just use the term stamps, services, tools, methodologies, portals, however you differentiate, however you define them. But the bottom line is, you're essentially, the analogy I use is you're raising up the internal IT people, giving them access to the tools. So in a sense, you're making them an extension of your organization, of your technical support, but also they're making you an extension of theirs. And this is where that relationship, that dual support model really has to come into play. And I was talking with an MSP yesterday. It was actually part of the coaching from the site. And part of the challenge that he was running into was building that relationship to a point where the internal IT understood that it was, in fact, a relationship that was based on mutual value, and especially on that initial conversation. So we basically talk about, and this is a very, very simplistic view, but when you take a look at the organizations that we're discussing or potentially having a CoMITs relationship with, they usually have some kind of organization such as this, and this could be compressed. So not all of them have a CIO, not all of them have level 3, level 2, or even level 1. In some case, they may have one person who kind of fills all these hats. It doesn't matter, because if you look at these 4 levels, and we have, for example, we have several manufacturing companies that really have nothing but a level 1 and or level 2 type person. Well, they're hosed if they have to be doing any of these top things. And we've also got some who are pretty heavy on the management side, but don't have the people to actually do the work. Either one of those are fine. But any way you slice it, we're taking their organization and we're adding the stamps. So we're empowering them. It's almost like we're giving them the Iron Man suit, if we use a superhero metaphor, or however you want to call it. So we're empowering them by giving them access to all of these tools so that they can actually go out and be as efficient, hopefully, as efficient as our people. And that really has to be a part of selling process, is not just the value that you bring, because quite honestly, I don't think that's critical here, but really, what is the value that they bring because you've enhanced them with these tools? And that has to be part of that conversation, because quite honestly, that makes them more powerful, that makes them more successful, and they're the hero, not you. They are the ones who are going to make the world a better place from their organization standpoint. Yes, you will be there. Yes, you will be a guide. Yes, you will be a mentor. Yes, you'll be the backstop, all of those kind of things. But focus on the internal IT, partially because, remember, they're the ones who are thinking that you're out to replace their job. But also, it's not just you coming in from the outside. Okay? Here's a different way of looking at it, though. It's kind of the same thing, but it's kind of hard, especially if you look at where's the separation of powers. If you look at it and say, well, we're going to be your level 3. Okay, who decides what's a level 2 and what's a level 3? Who decides where this one begins and this one ends? So the way that we approach it, but it's the exact same concept, is we still put the stamps across the whole layer: infrastructure, servers, endpoint, mobile, help desk. You could also put cloud services, whatever. But then what we do is we break down whose responsibility is it to actually perform the services and maintain these things. So you can kind of look at the first 2, infrastructure and servers. Well, that's really a level 3 job usually, for the most part. And the downside, the down points, endpoints, mobile, and help desk, those are really the level 1, level 2. So this is one of the areas where we've had a lot of successes by dividing that responsibility between by where does the need arise from. Okay? So it all gets down to the stamps. It all gets down to them using yours and you being able to help them with your knowledge and your expertise. So what makes great stamp products or vendors? In my opinion, it's these 8 points. And here's a couple of things, and I'm not going to read through the list, but you've got a lot of vendors that are talking about CoMITs, but then you ask them what they actually mean. Suddenly it gets a little denser as far as what they're actually specifically talking about. So when you see someone talking about co-managed, try to pin them down as far as what they actually mean. Because what we want to do is we want to be able to do delegated access, right? We want to be able to make it so that we can give, and if you think about it in kind of like three pieces, first of all, you've got the MSP, then you've got the internal IT, and then you've got whatever impact that has to the actual end user. So we're inserting that internal IT person's role into this organization. And so we need that layered access. And then the configurations and the alerting, we want the configurations to basically represent or reflect as much as possible that individual client's needs, which is not always different from one client to another, but often it is. So for example, if you're talking about endpoint, can the internal IT, if they're responsible for it, can they actually monitor, manage, and maintain policies and specialized groups or whatever for their end users? Because you don't want them to see all of the clients. And if you make changes, are the changes automatically inherited? Or if you create policies and then the policies are changed to a particular individual location or individual client, do you then have to propagate the changes, inheritance versus copy and paste and blah, blah, blah. And then can you split the responsibilities? So can you split the responsibilities such that your people see the stuff on the servers, they see the stuff on the workstations, or however you decide to split the responsibilities, okay? And then can we track change management? Because one of the issues that we do run into is, oh, that changed. I wonder who changed it. And if you have access for a particular stamp on both the part of the internal IT and the MSP, you don't want to get into finger pointing, but by the same token, you also don't want to just say, yeah, it's a Wild West, anybody can change anything. Okay? And this last one is really important. Are there training resources that specifically work towards the internal IT? And this is one where you can very easily run into some real issues here, because if all you do is you give them access and there's no training, no support, no nothing, what have you actually accomplished? So one of the things that we did, and we just did it, I think it was last week, they didn't invite me, is we did 2 half days of training for internal IT people. We had about 10 attendees, I think, for this one. So we spent 4 hours on Tuesday afternoon, last Tuesday, and 4 hours on last Wednesday, and we split it up between PSA, RMM, the endpoint, backups, and documentation. I think were the 5 that we worked on. And senior techs put together the curriculum, all that kind of fun stuff. Went through and guided our clients through how to best to use the tools. We answered the questions. We also asked for feedback, got some really good suggestions on how to make changes. This is the second of these formal things that we've done. Our plan is to do them every 6 months. Plus, we obviously recorded it. We're going to make it available to them. And then what we're probably going to end up doing also is put together a bunch of like 3 to 5 minute videos on some of the specifics that are not going to be about the stamps, but they're going to be about the tasks. So in other words, to basically say, what's a common thing that you need to do? From your job standpoint, okay, here's how you do it. Not, here's all the things you can do with this stamp. Okay? And reason being is because if you look at, think about it from the perspective. If you look at it from we're going to give you an overview of what this product or this tool does, then it becomes an advertisement. It becomes a marketing piece to show how great this tool is, how wonderful it is. As opposed to, if we talk about specifically, here's how you resolve an alert. Here's how you resolve this issue. Here's how you add a user. Here's how you do whatever. You're helping them do their job. Okay? An overview is great. Overview is nice. But it's really those how do I do this? How do I accomplish this specific task? So we just did our first, like I said, the 2 half days. We like that agenda. We like the approach on it. We've got, I think, one of our December goals, rocks in the EOS world, is to do 2 or 3 of the short videos and then add a couple of those every month that are going to be very, very simple. And if any of you have heard me talk before about, we're very, very big on LinkedIn and marketing, and we do a video every day. Our videos are not exciting. We don't spend a lot on special effects or anything along those lines. So we don't want fancy. We want to the point, meat and potatoes, here's how you do it. But this, because at the end of the day, the stamp doesn't matter. It's what the stamp does that matters. People don't buy drills, they buy holes. And that drives everything that we're doing as we're looking through this process. Any questions so far? I don't see anything on the chats. Cool. That must be making perfect sense. So here's one of the big things I hear often. The client already has something. The client already has antivirus. They already have a firewall. They already have this, that, or the other thing. So here's the thing, is you need to be real careful on this. Reason being is because it's easy for this to turn into we just bought this. There's money that changed hands. We installed it. Therefore, we want to keep it. And that's what you need to try to figure out, because it's kind of like if you hired a hunter and you hired a hunter to come in and get rid of a bear that was in your neighborhood or attacking people or doing whatever it is that bears do. And the person said, okay, I'll bring my rifle. And you basically said, well, no, we've got a bow and arrow. Go get him with that. Well, that's great. But if the hunter was used to the rifle, you just really diluted their performance. And here's the thing. They're not buying the stamps from you. They're buying the result of the stamps. So you guys, and we're a software shop, okay? But it doesn't matter. You've chosen the vendors and the tools that you've chosen for a reason. And hopefully a good chunk of that reason is the productivity that you get out of it for your clients. So you and your techs know how to use those tools, know what the best practice is, know the support. You selected it for a reason. All of those things add to the value of the purchase price of the product and actually, in my opinion, excel. So in other words, if let's say somebody was a SonicWall company. Now, almost every tech who's been in the business for more than 5 years has worked on a SonicWall, so we'll bypass that for a moment. But if you were basically presenting, Acme SonicWalls, or Acme firewalls, that's the product that you were using, and they said, well, we just bought this SonicWall, or we still have 6 months left in the SonicWall. Basically, your point is, our techs are experts on Acme firewalls. We know best practices. We know what to look for. We know what to train for. We selected them over SonicWalls for a reason. And because of that, when our agreement, we're bringing to you the value that knowledge is. So if we stick with the SonicWalls, we can try to help you, but we're not going to be as effective. We're not going to be as efficient, and you're not going to get as good of a sample or as good of a result out of doing it. Now, here's the catch. You need to decide how ahead of time, preferably, how strong you want to be on that. Because could that be a make or break? You know as well as I do, different companies work make or breaks on different levels and different reasons. You may have enough skills or whatever, but don't just say, okay. So what we've done in a couple cases, and this is true for a couple clients who had antivirus that was expiring 8 months, 10 months later. We took a look and we said, okay, tell you what, we're going to bill you. We want to bring in our antivirus. So we want to bring in the endpoint. So what we're going to do, we recognize the fact you guys invested X number of dollars for the remaining 10 months. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you a credit, and I'll explain why in a second, for 50% of that purchase price. Show me the invoice that you paid, and I'll give you credit for 50% of the remaining purchase price for the next 6 months, 8 months for the antivirus. And that way we're splitting the damage. We're splitting the cost. So I'm sharing a little bit, you're sharing a little bit. And the reason being is because I want to show that I get their issue. I get the need. I get the point. But I also say it's a discount, it's a temporary discount, because that way on the invoice, it actually says discount for antivirus replacement expires June 1st, 2021. Negative $200 or whatever it is. So that way, there's an end to this. It's very well documented. It's in the invoice. It's in all of those kind of things. And at the end of the day, they're still going to my stamps. So try to find ways for them to go over to your stamps when it's possible. When these are individual issues, individual lines. Is it always possible? No. We have one client that has about 400 users, thereabouts. They kind of have a ticketing system that's in use not only for their IT people, but they also have it in use for some of their other, not only end users, but other system users. It's rather convoluted. So we couldn't get them to use our ticketing system. We did write some integrations so that when we use ConnectWise Manage, when the ticket was generated and managed, it would automatically send them email alerts that would go over to their ticketing system. We were able to do that, and that worked out. But that was an exception, and it was an exception we were willing to make based on the size of the agreement. But here's the other catch. The larger, this gets into the how large of an organization should be your target. And again, my default recommendation is whatever the largest organization is that you go after normally, double that size. That should be what you go after as far as CoMITs. Your experience may vary, and absolutely, you know, a 300 employee company in the manufacturing world versus a 300 employee company in a graphic design or architectural group is completely different. But as a rule, I say double size is a good starting point. But here's the catch. The larger the IT organization, and by larger I also mean mature, the more mature the IT organization is, the more likely it is that they're going to have some stamps in place, especially in the monitoring and the management and the ticketing and all that kind of fun stuff. And it is going to be a tougher sell, because in the case of a smaller organization that doesn't have these things, or they have them but they're not well confined or not well defined or not well configured, you're bringing value, not just the licensing for the stamps, but the use of it, the configuration, the best practice, the upgrades, all of that. For larger IT organizations, or IT organizations for larger organizations, it is likely that they already have some of those things in place with value added specific to their organization. So the larger the organization, the more you may have to, I don't want to say, you may have to compromise to a certain degree, but make sure you're compromising at the end of the day and still generating value and profit for yourself. Because if you compromise in a way that you can't duplicate that, and you're going to have to expend special efforts in order to make that work, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Because at the end of the day, managed service providers, we make money because we're able to do roughly the same thing for every one of our clients. And our techs can roughly do the same thing regardless of who the tech is. You know, do more with less, and we do so. It's the McDonald's game. We want every one of our burgers to be the same, except based on a particular need. Okay? But these are these are four examples of the feedback that you get as far as the stamps go. And really, it just gets down to, again, this next slide. You reviewed them. You've got the experience, you know best practice, and your service is how to manage your stamps. And this graphic is really to the point. You're helping them, and this is you're in the top spot, and the internal IT person is down below. You're bringing their game up. And you can only do that by, number one, training them, encouraging them, and giving them positive feedback and all of that in order to use your stamps. But then also, your stamps have to be better than theirs. So those are the key things to look for. Make sense? Cool. So I'm going to show you a really an incredibly fascinating tool that we've developed, and it really is simple. All we've done is we've created a spreadsheet, and you may have the same thing, and if you don't, like I said, I'll be putting this up on the the Comets for MSP site. You just basically list, here's all the stamps that you offer and or support. Are they currently in use? Some of them may be aspirational. You haven't gotten to this, but you're going to in the next few months or whatever. Is there individual costs? You know, in other words, a new user is added. Is a new license consumed? Is there new cost for that license? And then categorization for it. Is it optional?
Hey Bob, are you showing something? Because all we're seeing is your mouse click on something. It says demo time.
So I am testing you to see whether or not you're paying attention. And only one of you passed the test.
There you go. Perfect. Thank you.
I'm so good at this. So, thanks for calling me out on that. So, again, all we've got is a generic list. Actually, I added some products and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't really matter, but you'll notice I'm really talking about the specific product here. I had a meeting yesterday. We were talking about adding a potential a user-facing description, so more about what it actually did, desktop endpoint, server endpoint, whatever. And again, whether or not it's in use, is there individual costs, put some categorization to it. Is it optional? Is it specific for Comets? Because, you know, stamps are for all clients. And then does it face the client? In other words, does the client end user actually have a role in it? And then what type of installation it has, and then any particular notes. I want to stress this is not to be considered, at least as it stands right here, this is not to be considered a proposal generator or a cost generator or anything along those lines. It's just a way to kind of get your head around what your offering is as far as the stamps go and how they play. And I'm probably going to add some additional features or some features, please, some additional pieces about how to get client or how to get training. The day I actually see training available from the vendors that is good for the internal IT. So, but the idea is that to take this, to go in here, put your inventory in here, and the validation lists are real simple, so that you can go in and you can just basically add your own list. And this way, you've got a little better, for lack of a better word, control as far as how, you know, knowing what works well, what doesn't. Because you're gonna, I promise you, you're gonna look at some of your stamps right now, and they're not going to be particularly effective in the Comets world, because they don't give the amount of delegation or siloized control between organizations that you'd like them to. So, any questions on this now that people can actually see it? Cool. And again, this will be added to the free stuff. Like I said, there's a couple more tweaks I want to make to it, but it'll be added to the free stuff probably by end of day, Thursday at the latest. One of the things that we're toying with right now is actually coming out and starting to talk about ourselves in model year terms. So Simplex IT 2021, here's all the stuff that we include. And then the following year, here's our model 2022. And to actually go and make it part of our agreement, instead of saying we're going to add 5% every month, or excuse me, every year, or 3% or whatever, as in guaranteed price increases, instead we're basically going to say we have model years. And every year, you can choose to either upgrade to the new model, which almost always, I mean, let's face it, with security and everything else, your offering is not going to be the same next year as it is this year. That's just the way it goes. And for us to basically say each model or each year we'll present the new model, the model may or may not have pricing increase. It will be up to you whether or not you want to accept the new model with the price changes and the new features or services or whatever, or you can choose to stay on the previous year's model with no price increase, but we're only going to support you if you're within 1 year or 2 years. We're only going to keep you if you're within 2 years. So we're kind of introducing the price increase, but we're embedding it as part of service maturation or something along those lines. Just as a side note. So in keeping with our time frame, it's pretty much what I wanted to go over here. Again, part of the starter kit is the CoMITs peer group. On December 8th, we're going to be doing a LinkedIn strategy review. Actually, my marketing director, Patty Smirk, is going to be part of that. So we're going to talk specifically about what we're doing and how we're doing it. And we are really looking into some pretty cool third-party tools. We'll be demoing those as well. And then the next one of these, which will be on the 22nd, is we're going to talk about costing and pricing strategies, since that seems to be a hot topic that people want to talk about as far as the CoMIT side. And again, if you join up with the starter kit, you'll save $100. And if you're a Tech Tribe member, you get an additional 10%. You get all the materials, new materials and stuff through 2021. And one of the things, and we're adding something each month, and one of the strategies we're starting to use, and the vendors are really buying into this, is we're doing monthly events, and we're going to start. We did one with Datto 2 months ago, September, I think. And we're actually doing one with Bigger Brains on end user education in December. And I think tentatively we're working with AVIC for January and so on and so forth, but we're not doing a product demo. What we're doing is we're basically turning it into here are the results. Wouldn't it be great if your employees all knew how to use Excel or all knew time management or all knew this? And then talking about, oh, and here's how you do it. Here's the tools. And the same thing for AVIC. We're not going to be demoing AVIC. We'll spend about 5 minutes on that. And the reason we're doing it this way is because we're going after both the management and the internal IT people. So we can talk pure MSP. We can talk about we can talk to the internal IT people. And by pulling away from the product demo and talking more about the product result, we think that is a better or an easier conversation to have with both parties. So we think it works for both the pure MSP and the CoMITs MSP. I'll let you know. And always, I would love to get feedback from people, like, explaining to me that I need to learn how to use screen sharing in Teams. And with that,